Good morning, Sense of Things. It's Jeff and Ron. We are in the midst of a kind of a crazy week. So we're going to talk a little bit today about credit downgrades. We're going to talk about earnings season. We're going to talk a lot about what's going on in the markets and our thoughts going forward. Good morning, my friend.
Morning, Jeff. It's August.
It is
Dog
August.
days of August.
Yes, it's the hot days of August too. Still, we just crested over our record over 100 days. I think 28 days now, which crested the record of the year I moved to Austin when it was just hotter than blazes. We're spending a lot of time inside.
I hear you. No, I feel the same. But the good thing is that August is a huge vacation month.
Yep.
Most of Wall Street goes away. They've closed out a lot of positions. So we should see a lot of volatility this month. That's for sure.
Hopefully not, unless the computers are trading in their stead.
They're always trading. They're computers.
Yep. And they can be a little volatile. So we may see some volatility, but not by the humans. Speaking of heat, I was doing a little bit of our current events type stuff, and I'd heard just a quick little story and remembered a story in the past here about a car carrier that had caught on fire off the Virginia coast. It was a Mercedes, I think a VW and Mercedes, and literally the entire ship caught on fire, sunk right in the harbor of one of the big East Coast ports, and they had to go in, dismantle it, peel that off. Just heard this in the news. There was another massive fire off the coast of the Dutch coast of another car carrier carrying electric cars that they finally got it put out after about 5 days, and they've towed it back into port. But yeah, it's just, the ship is totally ruined. And I think there was like 1,400 cars on board that are completely ruined at this point. I think the challenge of our world of switching to electric cars and everything else. And I just happened to notice on this Maritime Executive, I was just buzzing through here, and here's one I didn't hear about as well, right off of New Jersey, another one of these at the dock caught on fire, and they were trying to fight the fire. So this is a whole new world that we're experiencing with these big ship fires like this, and traditional firefighting, just pouring water on it, just doesn't do it with these electric cars.
It's amazing, because if the cars aren't on, how are they spontaneously combusting?
I don't know. And the scary part about this is what happens when one of these things does something like this in my house, if it's in the garage.
I haven't heard of any of that, though.
Oh, I've heard of a little bit of it. There's been some Teslas and things like that have spontaneously combusted. And I think the more you get some of these other manufacturers, and Tesla's been doing this for 10 years, some of these other manufacturers are just now bringing out their first gen of these cars, and you can have problems and when they light off. I'm a big fan of the show, the Grand Tour, which it's the old guys from the English show Top Gear. And one of them wrecked a car on, I think, the first season of the Grand Tour on Amazon. And it was a real high performance. One of these cars wrecked it. They put the fire out on site, put it in a warehouse, and it caught fire, I think, 5 times after that in the warehouse.
Where's the QC on all that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary to think, and it's massive shipping losses that we're starting to see as a result of this. This is something my old co-host on this show used to be obsessed with, but there are literally massive amounts of shipping fires happening. They were saying that the international community is starting to do more and more of these studies, and also like going on board these ships to look at their fire suppression and stuff like that, because there's been a series.
There's no way all this stuff is coincidental. There's got to be some sabotage here. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't think it's sabotage. I think it's just you've got these big container ships that have so much stuff on them that if they've got some kind of material on board that could catch fire, and then it's like a tinderbox at that point.
Interesting.
Yeah. interesting. I thought it was an interesting story to share today because it's just, I think it's an interesting world with these ginormous carriers and things like that.
Crazy. You know what? And the Port of Newark too is one of the largest in the country, next to Long Beach out in LA.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I think the big news of the week was yesterday. We had a credit downgrade.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Not surprising.
Yeah.
Long overdue. Look, there's what, a dozen or so credit agencies. There's three big ones, which were all under, significant scrutiny 15 years ago with the way they were in Wall Street's pocket, rating all the crappy paper on the mortgages and everything else.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting because you learn from history.
Mm-hmm.
So S&P downgraded our debt back in 2011 and has basically kept it at AA plus since 2011, never changed.
Yeah.
Fitch has had US debt basically on market outlook negative, market outlook watch negative, whatever, couple of different times. Now all of a sudden they decide to downgrade it to AA plus. And Moody's, who was the poster child for all this 15 years ago, hasn't changed their outlook even to negative watch or anything since. They still have it as AAA. They all have the same data.
Yeah.
What's the difference here? Well, look, a couple of podcasts ago, we talked about the mounting debt that we're paying, what, 1 to 2 trillion a year just in interest payments.
Yeah.
That's not going down. That's going up.
That's going up.
That's a nice part of our GDP is just us paying interest payments.
Mm-hmm.
These rating agencies see and understand that because that came out in the report with Fitch.
Yeah.
So what are the other two agencies seeing all of a sudden that they're not even downgrading it that much more?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I want it to happen, but
just reality of it happening. It's okay. You should all three be relatively close.
But also, if our debt, if you just looked at the numbers and didn't put the United States name in front of it,
Mm-hmm.
it would be single A.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be AA. It would be single A. I don't think it'd be triple B because we have the printing press. But if this was Britain debt with those numbers, there's no way it would even be AA plus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, European countries, it's all based on the euro and the common there. But yeah, I agree, and it's just our mystique of the United States that I think keeps it there. But I honestly look at it as, what does this really mean from the rating agencies? It means nothing in the end, because
it meant something to Wall Street. We've seen a significant pullback last couple of days. I think it'll continue throughout August. Who knows? But in the end, from what I understand, many of the investment banks, when they're looking at their balance sheets, when they're valuing those assets, I didn't realize, and again, my ignorance, that they use the rating agencies' ratings on bonds to price the asset value on their balance sheets. Okay. So because it went down to AA plus from AAA, that's going to affect many of these Wall Street banks' balance sheets. And I didn't realize necessarily the two were correlated, because more or less you're looking, what's today's price? That's what goes on the balance sheet through mark to market and through future pricing of these bonds for duration. The ratings on those bonds actually do come into effect.
Interesting. So is it only the investment banks and not just regular commercial bank?
My guess and opinion is yes, but honestly, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what? I've never been a bond guy. I've never followed it, honestly, before this year. This is the first time ever I've ever bought treasuries for a client in my career.
Same here.
So I follow it, but certainly I'm not an expert in how the rating agencies and the investment banks work with that. But if I had to guess, I would say yes.
Yeah. I've never been in a situation. I was meeting with a client yesterday, and they've got 6 figures sitting in CDs. I could get you an extra 1.25% just by being in treasuries.
Right.
At this point, it's just ridiculous.
Look, it's very much of an old school mentality. Even T-bills are an old school mentality. Look, most of the banks that are out there, nobody's even going in them. They're for advertisements on corners.
Right.
But there are still people with the mentality is I could still walk into a branch, I could get money, and if I need safety, I can do CDs. There's still that baseline mentality with a bank.
Yeah, just absolutely amazing to me that we've come to this world and how fast it's changed in a year.
The banks need the deposits and they need the money in the CDs to be able to lend
money
out and make money on that money.
Yeah.
But when people are pulling out money and putting it in the T-bills, believe it or not, the banks are suffering. That's why they're talking about so much cash on the sidelines. I include T-bills as part of that cash number.
Oh, I think so. It is just short-term. It's short-term money. It's just different type of short-term money. So what's your thoughts? We've certainly seen a little bit of a blow off here this last few days. What's your thoughts on the direction of the market here moving, let's say, the next 2 to 3 months?
Look, I'm on record. We've talked about it enough here that I think we could be in the first quarter of a recession by economic terms by Q4. Last week, technically, I was talking to another colleague of mine. I think we had a short-term blow off top. Technically, there was an indicator that more or less said that we probably were at a top of a short-term trend. So I think we're going to go negative to sideways at least for the next 60, maybe 90 days. And I think once we get to the end of Q3, where we are based on economically, what they decide to do with the Fed rate in September, what they discuss in Jackson Hole in later this month, all the with the G7, G8, or whatever it is, all the countries coming together at Jackson Hole. I think that'll really dictate the end of the year. I think we've seen the highs for the year last week, but I think we're going to go negative to sideways next couple of months. How about you?
I would say sideways for the next 60 days. And I personally believe we'll see another slight run towards the end of the year. I don't think we've seen the highs for the year yet. I just, from what I'm looking at, and historically, if you have a real good front half of the year, you typically have a little bit more run in the back half of the year. My personal belief is we don't see any recession this year. And I've been on record as saying we were going to have one in the second half of the year. I'm starting to see that push back at this point. And my expectation is I think we'll see it probably in the first quarter of 2024, which we might start the year, especially if we're seeing that coming at us, we might start the beginning of next year in the hole, and that first quarter be in the hole.
Many of the smart people that I follow that are deep in the weeds in this data, much more than me and you combined.
Yeah.
Many of them have pushed off their time frame too, either end of the year or first half of next year, where many of them were saying second half of this year. I still think there's a lot of things that could happen in the next 60 to 90 days. Look, some of the things we've already talked about between the student debt moratorium going away, the next Fed rate hike, but we've seen significant credit tightening with the banks.
Sure.
30-year fixed over 7 now, 7.2, 7.3. It's not just teetering at the 7 level. It's now over 7%.
Yep.
There's still high vacancies in commercial property. There are many other headwinds, which we talked about in the last couple of podcasts. None of those have gone away. If anything, they're rearing their ugly heads a little bit more just because the market's been going hot. Now, all of a sudden, people are focusing it. The VIX, the fear gauge, is now over 16 this morning when it hovered between 12 and 13.5 over the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So I think people are taking some money off the table. They're harvesting their profits. And that's why I truly think we're flat to sideways the next 60 days. There's a lot of fund managers that may have seen, hey, let's lock in a lot of our gains for the year, just in case people take more money off the table in the second half. Sure. So look, we could argue it both ways. Obviously, that's what makes for good banter. Yeah. I just think that we've gone too far, too fast this year. And I think we're going to be
flat
for the rest of the year, maybe negative.
I believe you're right on the point of, I think it was very much irrational exuberance in July. It's just ridiculous in July. So I agree with you on that point. I just think we're going to see a little bit of, and I think a lot of it's going to come out of what we're seeing we're getting reporting from Apple and Amazon today.
Yeah.
So you're getting some of those big players. And we saw Google or Alphabet, the numbers were just astounding how well they've done.
Yeah.
I think it's still those big seven. How are they doing? Because that's what's really continued to drive the market, but they're priced for absolute perfection. So they have to keep delivering above what that perfection is to keep them rolling at this point.
I heard a couple of industry experts last night and this morning talking about Amazon and Apple, that they're going to talk about how wonderful their business is.
Yeah.
They're also going to be talking about headwinds.
Yeah.
In the economy, mainly globally, not just US based, but they're going to be talking about headwinds. And I think a lot of that is to lower the bar of expectations.
Yep.
So they can try and jump over it 6 to 9 months from now, which we all think we're going to be stepping in a few potholes with the economy.
Correct.
So I think today's earning announcements will certainly be bellwethers for the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think from what I was hearing on Apple, they've got that upgrade cycle. I think they were saying 50% of Apple iPhone holders have not upgraded in 3 years or something like that. So they've got that future upgrade cycle for or I think it's the 15 or whatever, but that's not even out yet at this point. And
It's
so
funny you say that. I'm not an Apple phone guy. I
Yeah.
just refuse to have all my money and all my devices in the Apple ecosystem.
Yep.
So I'm an Android guy.
Yep.
I have had my main phone the longest I ever have. It's 7 years.
Yeah.
And actually next week I committed to getting a new phone just because my battery life, it's got a leak in it. And I've held on to it every software upgrade. My phone got better in the last 7 years.
Yeah.
I don't think if I could go back, I don't think I ever had a phone more than 2.5 years.
For the longest time, I had a Google Pixel, and Google, it's like they plan it because it's designed by Google, and they plan it. The battery life right at 2 years starts to go down. Always, Now I've had Samsungs for the last 2 phones, and they just keep on going. My battery life doesn't ever change. It doesn't seem to have any effect on them. So I don't know.
And the big thing is, look, I'm not doing video and a ton of selfies and how-to videos with it. So I could care less about the camera because I think the camera that's in there is fantastic anyway.
Good. It's almost better than my actual physical camera.
So for me, I got all my apps on my phone. For me, it's about battery life.
Sure.
So I'm at the point, I really was there 6 months ago, but if people with Apple, if their phone's only a year or 2 or even 3 years old, what are the new features in the phone that's going to go, oh, I've got to have that new Apple phone?
Yeah.
Better video, 3D. Come on. Don't tell me AI, I'm going to puke. But what is in this new Apple phone that's going to make the phone from 2, 3, or 4 years ago like significantly better? It's going to enhance their lives.
It's nothing new. Yeah,
Other
they've
than
already
saying, I got the
upgraded
new
the
phone.
software. Yeah, I mean, they've upgraded the software and everything else, so it really doesn't matter at that point.
I hear you. I want to switch gears a little bit,
Okay.
talk a little bit about some other items. We should probably come up with some of these topics. You and I both not only help individuals out, but we also set up retirement plans for businesses. And I thought this was interesting. Obviously, the data is a little old, not too bad. But for 2022, I thought there was an interesting disparity between what Vanguard and Fidelity reported as average 401k balances.
Okay.
And I thought that was interesting because 112,000 at retirement isn't going to go very far. Fidelity has it a little over 97,000.
Yeah.
I saw a report yesterday because I used 22 as a number, not 2022, but somebody says, well, Ron, how much do I need in retirement if I require X on an annual basis?
Correct.
I said, just take that number, multiply it by 22.
Okay.
And that's your dirty math, a bogey. So if they need 100,000 a year, they need 2.2 million. Well, rather ironically, I saw a report yesterday that they were talking about the average person based on a medium to high earner, that that if they want to live off their dividend income or either use a 3 to 5% withdrawal rule a year, last year it was 1.7 million they recommended.
Okay.
This year it bumped up to 1.8.
Okay.
So that puts you into around the $75,000 range if you're looking at a 5% annual dividend yield, give or take, interest, dividend, whatever you want to call it. And people talk to me like they talk to you. What's better, a Roth or an IRA? And look, if you're anti-government and you're trying to save on taxes, the longer that you have to put into a Roth, we all know is better. But there are some people that need the tax benefit now. So coming into a conversation, and I'm interested to hear your opinion because people are coming to me all the time.
Sure.
You know, people say, should I do an IRA or a Roth, or should I do an IRA? Or my company offers a 401k and they offer a Roth option. Should I do pre-tax or a Roth? And I can't believe how many people are just not familiar with the benefits of the Roth. Because when they're looking at these things, they're trying to figure out which is the better way to go. And I don't know what you recommend, but what I tell people, especially in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I say, look, we know who's in the White House now. We don't know who's going to be in the White House before you're ready to retire, when you're ready to retire. Meaning, we don't know what the tax rates are going to be, but I do know one thing, and I think you can agree. Taxes in the future are only going to go in one direction, up, right? Even when you retire, your tax bracket is going to go down. But the idea is after the age of 59 and a half, government can't touch your Roth money. So if you have 10 years or more to go, what I typically advise people is, look, you got 100, 200, 500,000 sitting in your 401k or your IRA. You don't want to convert that all at one time, because if you're a high earner, that's a hell of a tax bill. So what I typically will tell people, you got more than 10 years to go, do 5 or 10% a year. Convert. Just get on a schedule every year, do it in January or February. This way you have 12, 13, or 14 months to pay off those taxes. And down below, I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are typically the questions that I go through with an average person if to talk about either Roth conversion or if they're asking me if it's worth it. If they got at least 5 years or to go to retirement, maybe you want to do a portion. But even if you do a portion, it really doesn't give you enough time to let the Roth money that you converted grow enough to make up for the taxes. If you have 10 years or more, absolutely get on a schedule.
It's basically a no-brainer at that point.
How do you typically advise your clients? Similarly, a little different?
Pretty much the same. I like to, if they've got the capacity, so let's say they're not somebody that's in a super high tax bracket. If they're the average Joe that's making 6 figures a year, low 6 figures a year, I will tell them to accelerate that process a little bit. Instead of 10 years, we convert it over a 5-year period of time and accelerate. And then that gives us time for that to recover. Let's say if they're 15 years before retirement, we accelerate it through 5, and then that gives us 10 years for those monies to recover at that point. So that's typically my strategy when it comes to that. When I deal with a lot of folks that work in the high tech industry, so they're always getting RSUs and things like that. So we typically use that found money that you get in those.
It's already
they make
taxed.
a good salary. They're getting this kind of found money through RSUs and things along those lines. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a restricted stock unit. So it's effectively taking your part of your compensation, giving it to you in the form of company stock, but that stock is restricted for a period of years. So maybe 3 to 4 years, that money is restricted. So you can't spend it. It's whatever happens in the stock during that time period. And then that gets put onto your income. It's pretty much found money for a lot of folks. So we use that as found money to pay down your taxes and then convert some dollars from there. But I like to really accelerate that as quickly as possible so that we can let those Roth dollars do it.
Now, what about in a retirement plan? Because I tell people, especially under 55 or 6 or 50, I said, you should be doing a hybrid as a hedge. Meaning put at least 50% on both sides, 50% pre-tax, 50% Roth, because you get some tax benefit now, but you're going to get a tax benefit later. And then once they get into their 50s, they skew it maybe 75% towards Roth, 25% towards IRA, because you really want it to work in your favor. So after the age of 59 and a half, the government can't touch it. A lot of it will depend on whether they need the tax benefit now, but certainly to push more towards Roth is only going to benefit them later. And I love the conspiracy theorists that think the government is going to tax that Roth money. No, they can't. It's illegal, number one. And number two, there'd be a civil war.
Yeah.
I know they need to increase their tax base, but they can't change the law and do double taxation. I think we had the Boston Tea Party some 250 years ago that told us that can't be done again.
Yeah. And then we had the Tea Party a few years back too, because of some of the same things that were being considered. I think the other side of it is a lot of times I'll get people that are in their 60s that are close to retirement, and they're asking me, should I convert? In most cases, you've got to run the numbers and see if it works. But in most cases, I tell people to leave things as is. I'm a big believer in what you're talking about of blending those maybe 50-50 or whatever of Roth versus traditional. One thing you have to remember, though, is always you're matching. So if you're going to do it 50-50, your matching is always going to be pre-tax. So you need to factor that in. You don't want to just go 50-50, because that means your 401k will be skewed towards pre-tax a little bit more in retirement.
That's why if you are a high earner and you're over 50 and you could do 30,000 a year, 22,500 plus 7,500, then you should do 75% of your contributions in a Roth, because if you're going to get the rest in a match, then that will level it out a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I think I personally believe in the Roth. I look at it as I probably pay more taxes today than I will in the future, but I still pretty much skew most of my money towards the Roth when it comes to that type of retirement plan savings. I'm just not a big fan of making the IRS my business partner in retirement, because they're a really terrible business partner, because they want 30 or 40% of my money. So I'm not a big fan of that. I'd rather be with the Roth. And if there was ever a change to the rules where they outlawed the Roth, they're still going to, they'll grandfather it in. Otherwise, people would vote everybody out of office that made up.
There's no way. There's no will for getting rid of the Roth.
No, not at all. And I think the fact that they have an unlimited amount that you can convert just says exactly what it is. Okay, if you want to convert, then you're going to pay us taxes, which is what we want. We're fine with you not paying taxes later, but we want our money now in those cases. But
as I like to tell my clients, my goal is I'm a risk manager.
Yep.
And if I could save you taxes, I think you could spend that difference in the tax savings a lot better than the government can. Totally. And every single one agrees. So the idea is, at the end of the day, put more money away that you're not going to pay in taxes later on, because you're going to need it.
And the other side of the coin is, we're talking about an example of what you were saying. Okay, 1.7 million. That's 1.7 million if I was paying full taxes. If I've got mostly Roth money or tax-free money, there's other strategies too that you can use to create tax-free money. The beauty of tax-free money is I don't need as much money to generate the same amount of income in those cases.
No, I agree. But it's always an interesting conversation, and I'm not surprised or shocked anymore, but it doesn't matter the age of the individual.
Yeah.
They just have put money into their 401k. Nobody ever advised them to even consider a Roth if the Roth was available, or doing any kind of Roth conversion. And I'm sure you've had the same life stage people approach you like they approached me. All of a sudden, they're in their mid to late 50s, early 60s, and they got all this money sitting on the pre-tax side, and they never converted. And if they would have talked to us, or at least been advised 10 or 15 years prior, they would have been in a much better shape in retirement, because the Roth becomes a piggy bank at that age.
And it's like I said, once again, you don't have to use as much money to generate the same amount of income. So I'm a huge fan. My young people that I deal with that are in their 20s and 30s, it's 100% Roth with them. It's just going to be better in the long run. There's other income reducing strategies that you can use with real estate and other things that are, I think, better vehicles to lower your taxable income, and just use the Roth as a vehicle to where you can grow a big pile of tax-free money. And still, you're going to be limited on what you can put in. If you don't have a 401k, all you can do is a Roth IRA. In those cases, there's some insurance strategies you could use to build up tax-free money too. But if you've got a 401k alternative, that's a ton of money that you can plow in every year that's tax-free. And if the company matches, then that's going to be taxable money. But I always look at that as found money. It's found money for me. I've got it. And yes, I have to pay tax on it, but it's money that I didn't have to put up at that point.
And a lot of people just either never had a good advisor or no advisor at all.
Yeah.
And most people just like, my money's in my 401k. They don't know what it's invested in. Many of them don't even know what their contribution rate. Some of them can't even tell you the match formula, with it. And look, I realize you got to live your life, but it's your money. It's your investment. So they know the market goes up and down. At least they recognize that. But at the end of the day, there are strategies that you can do, even though you have limited asset choices. There are other things that you can do to really save yourself money over time. And if you're not going to work with an advisor, take 5-10 minutes and research it.
Yeah, educate yourself on it. That's part of what we exist for, is to share this type of information with you. So hopefully this will be worthwhile for you to at least spark you to go, hey, I need to talk to somebody about it. And I would say Ron and I both, we're here. If you've got questions or if you need help with, is this a good idea? We're here to help with that type of stuff. That's why we do these shows. If not us, find somebody that is close to you that can take a look at it for you and see if it's worth your while.
And it's the same thing with RMDs, folks, because you don't pay an RMD with a Roth.
No. Nope. That's
so if you're sheltering more towards the Roth side of it, you're not going to need to pay the RMD. And anybody that's taken an RMD knows the first 3 to 5 years is when the government gets a nice chunk of that money taken out. So you got to pay in taxes. So that's just another consideration too, that most people don't realize, because they want to retire at 60, 65. But until they hit their RMD range in 70 to 72, they're like, oh crap, I should have started converting back in my 40s and 50s.
That's exactly right.
Things going. We should probably do a podcast the next month or so just talking about RMD. So
I totally agree.
That's another topic of conversation.
Totally agree. Good, man. I thought this was good stuff. We will keep sharing more and more of this type of stuff with you, because the show's it's more than just about the market. It's about good planning topics. And I thought this was a really effective one today, Ron. So thank you for putting that together, because it's a topic that everybody needs to be thinking about right now.
Yeah. All good.
All right. Very cool. Folks, thank you for joining us today. We're here every week. We put these shows up on Thursday every week. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that you get notification as soon as we put them up. And we will see you guys back here next week.